Hi everyone, just a really short video explaining how offers are made. I'll do this in two sections. In the first section, I'll explain how it works after you've received your ATAR. In the second section, I'll explain how it works before you've received your ATAR, so for the early entry rounds. Don't forget that selection rank is your ATAR plus any adjustment factors you might be eligible for example, subject bonus points, regional bonus points, EAS, that sort of stuff. For the purposes of the video, we'll assume that 3 different students are all interested in the Bachelor of Macrame making and that their preferences are all the same. We'll also assume that they meet all the prerequisites, so entry will be based purely on their selection rank. Okay, so how does it all work? There's a couple of overriding principles, one being that you can only be offered 1 course per round. So that's really important. You might be eligible for all 5, but you can only be offered 1. Which one will you be offered? You're offered your highest eligible preference. So we'll use these 3 students as an example to try and show you how that actually works. So if we look at student 1, they received a selection rank of 97.25. So what happens, that selection rank is put into the system and it says which one is the highest one that they meet the eligibility for. So in this case, they would actually be offered their first preference. If we look at student 2, they received a selection rank of 89.5. So same sort of process. No, you're not eligible for that one. No, you're not eligible for that one. But yes, you are eligible for that one. So that is, in fact, their highest eligible preference. So that's what they're offered. So if we look at student 3, their selection rank is 62. Again, same system. No, 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 and yes. That's pretty much how simple it is. If we go back to student 1, and we look at their selection rank, which is really high, it's 97.25. As you can see, that actually would get them into any of those 5 courses. So they're eligible for all 5, but the system works that you're offered your highest eligible preference only. So that's why they're only offered the first one. So what I would recommend students do is they should always accept any offers that they've been made in any rounds. So they're accepting those courses there. If these 3 students did nothing after that, then what would happen in subsequent rounds, if there were subsequent rounds and if there were vacancies in courses, student 1 wouldn't be offered anything else because there's nothing higher than the one they were offered. Student 2 would be eligible to be considered for number 1 and number 2, and student 3 would be eligible to be considered for 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's say, for example, though, that student 1 had a change of mind and thought, actually, I really want to do that course at University of DEF. What they would do the day after or later that evening, whenever it opens up again, after they've accepted this offer here, they would go in and do one of 2 things. They can either delete that course, so that would then mean this one becomes number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, and this is number 4. Or they could just move it down the order, which means it would then become number 5. So this would be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and this one's number 5. It would then mean they're now eligible for all of these courses in subsequent rounds should positions become available. So it's a pretty simple sort of system, but I understand that it can be confusing at times. So hopefully that sort of has simplified it for you a little bit. If you are confused at all, please do not hesitate to come and speak to me and I can sort of explain that in a bit more detail. What we're going to do now, we're actually going to speak to you, I'm going to speak to you about the early entry rounds. So obviously entry for those rounds is based on things other than ATAR. So it might be your Year 11 results, it might be school recommendation scheme, so a recommendation from the school. It could be a number of different factors depending on which university's program you have applied for. Now, the main thing that I really want to speak to you about this is some of the universities are using the incorrect terminology. So they're saying in their publicity documents that it has to be your highest preference on your UAC list. That is incorrect. It has to be your highest eligible preference. This has been confirmed by UAC, so rest assured this is the correct advice. So it's pretty much the same as how I explained with the previous examples, but we're not using selection ranks. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cross out the selection ranks because they're actually not relevant for this example. Now, what we're going to assume just to make things interesting, is that the University of ABC, let's say that they don't actually participate in any sort of early entry rounds. That will make things interesting when I do the explanation. So with student one, let's assume that University D, so the second, third and fourth and fifth preferences, all of those unis all love this student and they think that they're awesome and they want to offer them an early entry spot. Remembering the terminology highest eligible preference, what would happen with that student? They would not be offered this because they're not eligible, purely because that institution does not participate. But because all four of these unis want to offer them a spot, they will be offered their highest eligible one. So they will be offered this one. If we look at student two, let's just make it a little bit more interesting. And let's say that only these three unis want to offer them a spot. So what would happen is they're not eligible for this because that uni does not participate. They're not eligible for this one because the uni has assessed their application and said, look, at this point we're not prepared to make you an offer, but they would be eligible for this one. So this is the one that they would be offered. So, and the same sort of system would apply with student three. So pretty much that's how it works. Now, a couple of questions with that. So a couple of people say to me, what's the point of having that first preference, this one here, in your preferences if they don't actually even participate in the early entry rounds? There's two answers to that. Number one, you can actually leave it there because it just becomes ineligible. So your highest eligible preference is the next one. Or alternatively, you could actually delete this course for the early rounds and then accept this when you're offered it. The next day, go in and add this one back in. Hopefully that goes some way of explaining the system to you. But again, come and see me if you need help.